Hi, who are you and why should I care?
I don't know that you should care, but I am Terry Medalen, and I happen to help run Primare with a focus on marketing. And I'm also involved with product development and all other kinds of things, like speaking with journalists.
Good. So, what are we looking at?
Well, what we're looking at is a recently released 8-channel amplifier called the A35.8.
Yep.
And the first question in people's minds with this is why 8 channels? They're used to odd numbers, 5, 7, 9, 11, whatever it might be.
Sure.
And we struggled with the decision making as to the number of channels we would have. And we realized that whatever decision we made, given our experience with 5, 7, and 3-channel amplifiers, it would always be wrong for a large group of people. And then we realized that a lot of our customers love the aspect of bridging. So we have a stereo amp, the A35.2, that you can bridge. And in a lot of cases, you don't need any more power than from that single stereo amplifier, and yet people love to bridge them, turn them into high power monoblocks and have fun.
Of course.
And it inspired us with the idea that we could make each pair of those 8 channels bridgeable. And therefore, you can select how you want it to be used. And so in the case of, say, a 5.1 system, you bridge 1, and that's your center channel, and the rest populates your 5-channel system. You add a stereo amplifier, and you've got 7.1. Or one of my favorites, actually, I misspoke here. You bridge 3 of the pairs, and you have left, center, right bridged, high power, and then you have a stereo pair left for your rear channels, your pair of rear channels. And then doing the earlier described version, just bridging the center channel, that's the way you can do 7.1. And then adding the stereo amp, you can, as you can imagine, start adding channels as you go along.
Sure.
And then the other thing too that it is able to do, which is kind of surprising and feeds into this kind of mania for bridged high-powered amplifiers, is you can bridge all 4, and into a bi-wireable speaker, you can bi-amp that speaker with 1,500 watts of power.
In a remarkably small box for something that's 1,500 watts, usually that would be falling off of that table and falling into the floor below.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I had it sitting on top of the A32, which was our last big AB amplifier before we went fully into Class D designs, given our feeling about what Class D can bring to the party. And it was sitting on top of that amplifier, and I realized that 1/3 of the size, 1/3 of the weight, and we had 3 times the power from this amplifier. And that's kind of part of one of our reasons for a lot of our design elements is try to make things as compact as possible so they can fit into relatively normal living environments with greater ease than they otherwise might. Although in these days of high energy rates, maybe the cool running Class D may not be preferred. Sure. You might want a Class A or 2 amp to keep things toasty warm.
Yeah. Although you're still paying, you're still paying your fuel bills.
Still paying somehow, some way or another.
Absolutely.
And then the thing below
Yep.
is again kind of a continuation of our multi-channel or home cinema line that we're finally getting back into after a few years of being absent from the marketplace. And it is the SPA25 integrated amplifier. 9 channels of power, 11 channels of processing. Obviously we do, maybe not so obviously, DTSX, Atmos, immersive sound. We do Dirac, digital signal processing, and then we have eARC to be able to kind of round out the package of video switching that we do at 4K 60, topping things out at 4K 60, feeling that it actually allows us to design in the best possible video performance.
Sure.
Without having to run kind of a risk for our company in being able to adopt some of the higher frame rate and resolutions, the 8K 60, 4K 120, that may have limited use value at this present date. Now I know people might want to have that HDMI 2.1 moniker as they look through the features list, but we, as we design any product, go after it with something we call the practical design approach.
Sure.
Does it really provide a significant benefit in performance or functionality to warrant the cost? And we get asked this a lot, particularly when it comes to our small displays, why we don't put a big display on all of our units. And it's usually done, I think, people writing to me on, say, an iPad.
Yes.
Where we have that display in your lap at the best viewing distance with all the information you might want for something like this. It has streaming capabilities, has our Prisma streaming technology in it, and that's the practical place to put it. When we started building amps 35, 36, 37 years ago, one of the features that we had was remote control. And at that point, you may well remember these days, remote control was considered evil in the world of high-resolution audio because of the compromises involved in implementing it. But we thought that the best place, the most practical place to change volume, which is about what it was limited to at that point, was from your listening position. And so to have the technology and its reach that we possess now to be able to control virtually every aspect of the system from your listening position just makes sense to us.
Yep.
And having a large touch screen 3 meters away from your listening position makes no sense to us, and it will just raise the cost.
Yeah.
It causes certain levels of reliability issues, software updating, all of these other kinds of concerns that we can and our customers step aside and avoid. Otherwise, in order to keep prices down, compromises have to be made to the internals. And it's difficult enough now to design the best sounding stuff given current conditions of supply to have to think about making any other compromises just for the sake of putting in a feature that may be great on the sales floor, but once you get it home may have very little use value.
Yeah. Now, increasingly, obviously, we're an audio-based company, but I think increasingly Atmos is becoming a thing even in the audio space.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a change with people being more interested in traditional audiophiles, being more interested in multi-channel yet, or is that something that's coming?
Well, it's coming, I think, and in fact, it's that anticipation of that that we look for in people adopting the SPA25. We'll be doing a processor version, a preamp version of this, the SP25, to partner the A35.8. But it is with that idea that these are designed to be musical. And whether that music is done on 2 channels or multi-channels, we want people to be able to watch and or listen to anything they want with the greatest level of satisfaction and fidelity. And this is a particular interest of mine in that I have a parallel career path of being a film producer and film teacher with a specialty in film sound. And I know the amount of work that goes into creating a film soundtrack. And I know the work that goes into mixing, in some cases, multi-channel music, and that it can provide you a sense of realism that will affect you in ways, say, watching a film emotionally that you might never expect, or in music, being really able to divorce you from this sense of it being a reproduced event. And I often think back to the days in Bell Labs when they were doing the original experiments, when stereo, meaning solid in Greek, that they were experimenting with 5-channel systems, with a stereo pair, center mono, rear channels, to give that sense of reality. But limitations of technology meant mono to start, then we moved to stereo. And I see this as just a natural evolution and a progression to get back to that kind of theoretical idea that to provide the experience of being in a concert venue, let's say, or in an artificially created venue, say with popular music, that this offers so many opportunities for creativity, as well as then for reproducing an amazing experience. And so I'm hoping, although it's hard to be optimistic in this regard because the knives are already out, and they all come out regarding how this is a corruption of our stereophonic values. And there is no doubt that there are some people that are doing some of these mixes seemingly in a way to make sure that people understand the value of their rear channel speakers by having tambourines floating behind you.
It's,
what was it, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, I think it was, or something.
It's the same in the old quadraphonic days when everything was ping pong around the room, and that's not necessarily useful. But I agree. I think I've heard some things that so enhance the experience because you are there, which isn't. You're not sitting in the mix. You're actually sitting in the presence of the music, which I think is wonderful.
Oh, it can be.
And okay. So it irks some purists, but I think there is a move toward this. We're noticing it slowly. Yeah. Yes, there's pushback. There will always be pushback until then. Suddenly, it's so adopted that they say, "Well, why haven't you done this?" It's always the way.
Well, and there's that weird sense too that people seem to think that technology doesn't advance. Yeah. That we don't learn how to better use all of the tools that we have. And you can think back just to the early stereo days with the locomotive.
Yes.
Where you would listen to that, or my father loves command recordings because he loves what he calls the separation. Yes. And it just simply means that you've got guitar hard left, you've got singer hard right, and then something in the middle, and he loves that. And yet we've grown to create a more subtle sense of soundstage, and whether it's creating a natural soundstage or an artificial soundstage, it'll just keep getting better, I think.
I saw some very early footage of Alan Blumlein doing the stereo tests with him and his assistants in white coats walking across the stage very pointedly saying 1, 2, 3, 4. And the other thing that they did is they stood outside of Clapham Junction Station, which is at the time was the busiest rail station. I think it's still the busiest rail station on the planet. And I think maybe a couple of the Indian ones have outdone that, but certainly Clapham Junction is a very, very busy station. And there were trains coming in, you could see them, and they were always right to left, and it seems from there on in everyone did the same thing. It's always right to left. Whenever it's a stereo record of trains, it would come in the right channel and end in the left, and that was Alan Blumlein setting up his camera and 3 microphones. And that was in the early 30s, I think. So
No, it's just amazing too how and I'm sorry I keep talking about these kinds of philosophical topics. They're too of interest. It is that weird sense that this immediate negative reaction to things like this, without an understanding of maybe exploring it further or being interested in watching it progress and evolve.
We're just meandering with style here.
Exactly. Well, I hope. I'm hoping for the style.
But let's get back to the finally. How much are the 2 devices?
It all depends upon what country you're in.
Of course.
So, and
you don't know it. Not in zloty. Let's look.
So 5,500 euro.
Yep.
And 5,000 euro.
Thank you very much, Terry. It's been great.
Hey, fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.